15 times The Walking Dead was less violent than the comics. Part 1.
If you are brand new to our channel, we invite you to take a moment to subscribe. Just click on the lit red button as well as the gray bell. Why the bell? Well, it will let you know every time we post a new video.
1. Andrea never died. In the TV series, Andrea was the kind of character that annoyed fans because she often seemed emotionally unstable and a risk to the group. It's the thing that drove fans nuts, because although she talked a good game, she was practically scared of her own shadow. That opinion certainly didn't change after she decided to move in with the governor in Woodbury to start a new life outside of the group. After all, how could fans forgive a character who willingly wanted to start up a relationship with someone as sinister as the governor? Her death on the series was pretty intense, as she ended up dying, and then turning into a walker, which was her worst fear overall. These events just didn't transpire in the comic books. In fact, Andrea never left the group and instead she became a sharpshooter. She was a central part of the storyline involving the prison, and protected the group with her shooting skills. 2. Merle never existed. We all remember Merle, Daryl's surly and rather unpleasant brother who was a problem with the group right from the beginning. He was the type of person who would rather see someone dead than happy. He seemed to enjoy other people's pain. He seemed to be the kind of problem that was going to get members of the group killed on more than one occasion. It got to the point that Rick knew that Merle had to be dealt with. Merle's first big plot twist came at the rooftop of a shopping center, when he was handcuffed and left for dead, even though he ended up cutting off his own hand and made it out alive. However, he did eventually turn into a zombie, and Daryl ultimately had to kill his own brother when he saw him wandering around in zombie form. How was this dramatic moment different from the comics? Well, in the comics, Merle didn't even exist, which makes sense since Daryl didn't exist in the comic books either. 3. Carol is not a monster. In the TV series, Carol is depicted as a stone-cold killer. She rarely showed remorse for the people or zombies that she killed. There was more than one occasion when she chose to kill a human for the greater good. She didn't care about who she killed, as long as it was not someone from her immediate family. Yet, she wasn't the same girl in those comic books. She wasn't the plain Jane that she was in the series. In fact, she was quite the looker in the comic books, enough to attract Tyreese's attention, at least. She was also pretty feisty, and considered a tad bit nuts, but not the emotionless robot that she comes off as on the show. The feisty Carol even suggested to Tyreese that they should have a foursome with Rick and Lori. Talk about something that would have raised the ratings. 4. Abraham died sooner. In the TV series, Abraham died at the hands of Negan with a bat, in the same manner that Glenn eventually died. Yet, in the comic books, that wasn't the way that it went down. In the books, Abraham didn't live as long. In fact, he died in the same way that Denise died. He was killed with a crossbow mid-speech while he was talking to Daryl, except Daryl didn't exist in the comic books. This might be a little difficult to follow due to all of the inconsistencies between the show and the comics. Denise actually died in the comic books from a zombie bite that she left untreated because she was trying to save her boyfriend's life. She had a boyfriend in the books, even though the TV series had her dating a girl, Tara. It seemed as if their lives were all connected, and if one character was supposed to die one way, it happened, even if it meant another character had to take their place. 5. Negan threatens Carl. Rick, being the tough guy that he was, he often threatened people, even when he found himself in a pickle. That was just the case when it came time for him to face the all-terrifying Negan. The group was in dire straits, and there was Rick down on his knees threatening Negan that he would one day kill him when he got the chance. Whether it was on the TV show or in the comic books, Negan didn't take the news very well at all. In the show, Negan dragged Rick into an RV and drove off with him. He then unceremoniously threw him into a horde of zombies without a weapon. Yet, in the comic books, things are a little more disturbing. After Rick threatened to kill Negan, he tells Rick to go ahead and try. He said that this would result in just taking more lives in the same manner as Glenn. If that wasn't bad enough, Negan threatened to have some of his men, the Saviors, run a train on his son, Carl. That's the last 6. The governor tortured Rick. Rick was a pretty strong adversary when it came to being the leader of the group. There didn't seem to be a situation that he couldn't handle, even though he's not the strongest man in their group. Whether it's by instinct or skill alone, Rick always had the upper hand in most situations. In the TV series, he was never once captured and tortured. In the comics, though, he was captured by the governor, along with Glenn and Michonne. He took them into custody in the hopes that he could torture information out of them, though we suspected he did it out of sheer joy as well. During the act of torture, the governor chopped off Rick's hand, which was shocking in and of itself. He also carved a few body parts off of Michonne as well, which led to her eventual rage, where she got creative with a spoon. 7. Michonne violates the governor. It was no big surprise in the series that Michonne hated the governor, since she expressed her hatred for him in every way possible. There was no love lost between the two. After all, she was responsible for his daughter's death as well as the loss of his eye. In the comic book, however, the governor was seen as even more of a monster than in the TV show. In the comic book, Michonne dealt with the governor in her own special way. At first, she started off with a drill that she took to his shoulders. After that, she cut off his right arm and watched him bleed. If that wasn't enough, she ended the torture by shoving a spoon up the guy's ass. Talk about some serious revenge. The guy never stood a chance against Michonne. You certainly don't expect that sort of thing during The Walking Dead, and it's no wonder that it got cut from the TV series. Just when you think the scene couldn't get any worse, however, Michonne then used the same spoon to gouge out the governor's eye. 8. Maggie blames Rick. When Glenn died on the Season 7 premiere, the group banded together in their time of mourning. There were some tears and some talk about how Glenn should be buried, but no one wanted Maggie to have to deal with it alone. Carl approached Maggie and hugged her, and it became a heartwarming time, where they got together to determine what to do about their dead friend. As a group, they were always united as they disposed of Abraham's and Glenn's remains. Yet, that was not what happened in the comic book. After Glenn's death, Rick made a speech that resulted in Maggie coming up to him screaming and calling him a coward. The only thing that stopped the abuse on Rick was Carl pulling a gun on Maggie. To make matters worse, Sophia jumped on Carl and bit him in order to get him to drop the gun. It was pretty much a debacle of everyone turning on one another, which was very unlike the bonding moment that was seen on the television series.